So, for just over 10 years now, St John's has been the partner church for this area with Christians Against Poverty's head office. My official title is Church Line Manager for the Kingston and Wimbledon Christians Against Poverty Debt Centre, which is why I don't have business cards. It'd be this long. I'm totally a volunteer, but there has to be a church line manager, and it fell to me. 17 other churches have helped us in some way. And in fact, we're looking, as Stephen will happily tell you, we are looking at a different model where we're not the only partner church, we do it in a multi-church partnership. But over the years, 17 churches have helped in some ways. There's one church where they have a mothers' union, and every year they have a cake sale, and they give us about £200 every year, which is lovely, absolutely lovely, that they feel that they can do that to help. So what is CAP? Well, it's a national action Christian service that runs debt centres, it runs life skills courses, it runs job clubs for people who are unemployed, and it runs something called money coaching, which used to be called the money course, and we used to do that, but we stopped when COVID came, because it was possible then not to go to a church to have this course. You could go online. You could live in New Malden and do a course in Scotland. And as the technical knowledge of those of us who ran the money course wasn't as great as people in other areas, we decided it was probably best if we let other people get on with it. But we still run the debt centre. So why those two readings? Well, the first one, the one in Proverbs, in the middle of that said, whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. Ruth read it very well, but you may have missed it because the book of Proverbs is quite random in a way. I love it, but now and again it's a bit like somebody's just having odd thoughts and they tumble out. And there, smack in the middle was that. Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. And the New Testament reading. Paul's been preaching to the Gentiles. He comes back to Jerusalem after 14 years. They agree he should continue preaching to the Gentiles. They're a different group of people. You've probably never heard of them. To the Gentiles. And it said all they asked was that we should continue to remember the poor, the very thing I've been eager to do all along. They didn't say, oi, while you're talking to the Gentiles, don't forget to say this. Next time you come back, bring some souvenirs. All they said was, remember the poor. Absolutely clear, God has a heart for the poor. So how did St John's get involved? Well, I won't bore you with the lead up to how we got involved, but some conversations took place. And what happened was, must be nearly 12 years ago now, on a Friday, 2 of our number went to a church in Ealing to hear about the money course. And then the next day on the Saturday, 4 of us went to the same church to hear about how to run a debt centre. The church was packed, actually, and as often happens when churches are packed, we had trouble parking, got there shortly before it started, and of course the only room in the church was on the front row, because churches always fill from the back. Halfway through the service, halfway through the morning, a lady was asked to come to the front. And she gave her story. She said when she was in her early 50s, she was probably mid-50s by now, she knew that redundancies were coming where she worked, and she was one of the people made redundant. She lived in a nice house. She had a car. Her husband had a car. All was well. And they thought, well, it'll be all right. I'm only in my early 50s. I'll easily get another job. 3 or 4 months went past, and she hadn't got a job. But they were managing okay. Then one Monday, her husband got ready for work, drove to work, and about an hour later came home. The firm he was working for had closed down over the weekend. Turned out that they had been subject to fraud. Somebody who worked there had been stealing money from them, and the company had gone under. Suddenly, they had no income. It takes a while to get on benefits. But they had savings. He was in his early 50s. He was going to get a job earlier. But as the months went by, nothing happened. They started to use their savings. and gradually they diminished. And then, she said, it got to the stage where we cut ourselves off from all our friends. We didn't want them to know. Sadly, in this country, there is a stigma to being in debt. Last year, nationally, only 3% of the people who CAP helped were in debt because of simple overspending, if you see what I mean. As she told us how they didn't answer the phone, they didn't answer the door, and they drew the curtains so nobody would know they were in case the bailiffs came. I genuinely, and I warn you now, there may be a point where I start again, I had tears started to come down my face. She even said at one point that when the doorbell went, they hid behind the sofa. And I have to admit, I sat there thinking, what on earth's the point of hiding behind a sofa if you've got the curtains drawn? But that's how scared they were. Then she said, somebody must have realised, because a leaflet for CAP came through the door. We rang the number. Somebody came to the door, we didn't answer it, but they opened the letterbox and said, we're from CAP. They came in, they met with us, she said, and when they left, a weight went from our shoulders. She then said, the people who came eventually invited us to church. We started going to church. My husband's not there yet, but I have become a Christian. I was sitting there, tears streaming down my face. And a thought went through my head. Keep staring straight ahead. Don't let the three people you're with see that you're streaming tears. When we got back to the car to come home, conversation started, and it led me to say, I stared straight ahead. I didn't want you three to see I was in tears. And the other three all said, that's funny. We were all staring straight ahead as well because we didn't want you to see that we were in tears. It was very, very moving. An amazing story. A wonderful story as it turned out. So later that week, or the next week, the 6 of us that had been, the 2 on the front, had got together and we said, we're into this, we've got to do something. So we spoke to Helen Durant Stevenson, who some of you will remember was the minister at the time at St John, said, look, this is how we're feeling. So it was agreed, I would write a paper, send it to the others, including Helen, they would amend it, we'd give it to everybody at St John's, and then a few weeks later we'd have morning service would be given over to it. So we did the morning service on it. Within 10 minutes of that service ending, we knew that St John's was 98% behind opening a debt centre. It's very much a team. The second time I cried over CAP, and I don't cry that often actually, but CAP has moved me, was the first Christmas we did hampers for our clients, and we did an appeal. Please bring goods for the hampers. If you don't want to do that, please give financially and we will get goods for the hampers. Please come on this day to help us pack the hampers. Please come the next day to help us deliver the hampers. On packing day, I had to leave the church for a few minutes. I could not believe how many people had turned up, and I couldn't believe how much money we'd got. The next year we had to say, please don't give us any more money. Half of what we've got last year, we've still got left. We are behind it fully. The lady's story was the start of it all. She's not alone. We have learned that debt does very unpleasant things to people. As I said, only 3% of nationally last year people were down to overspending. So what does it do to people? Well, it makes them feel isolated. Could we have the next slide, please? Can I just point out that if the slides don't come up, it is not Sophie's fault, it's mine. I don't use what you'd call a script. I've just got a few words on a piece of paper with big red letters where it should come. And if I go off-piste, it's going to be impossible for poor Sophie to do. So if you want to complain, come and tell me afterwards. Won't get you anywhere, but just come and tell me. This is a page straight out of CAP's 2025 report, which of course refers to 2024. Being in debt can cause people to stop their daily activities that help support their wellness and go into survival mode. That is exactly what happened to that lady who spoke that day in Ealing. Now, before we move on, I'll tell you the third time I cried. And there were only 3, so you're out of the woods after that, okay? It was 2 weeks ago at a CAT conference. Another lady came to the front to speak. She had 3 teenage sons, husband, all was going well. And then she needed to go to the doctor. She was having a problem with her eyes. The doctor referred her to the hospital. It turned out she had a rare condition which would lead to blindness. And of course, when she was blind, she couldn't do her admin job. She lost her job, and suddenly the debts start to mount. When you hear stories like that, you would have to have a very hard heart not to be tearful. So what does debt do to people? Well, the CAP annual survey that I mentioned showed these figures. These are national figures. I'm sorry to confront you with figures, but these will help. 52% of people CAP helped last year were afraid to leave their home. 78% scared to answer the phone. 62% scared to answer the door. 82% afraid to open the post. Can you imagine living like that? We ran a drop-in centre in the past now and again at St John's, and a lady came in and she had a big carrier bag with her full of post. She hadn't opened any of it. She hadn't even opened post, which clearly said on it, Christians Against Poverty at the top, which would have helped her, but she was too scared to open it. Could we have the next one, please? Thanks. On average, it was found out, people waited almost 2 years before they sought help. 63% down to embarrassment, 56% to shame, 48% to guilt, 46% fear. Some people thought they could help themselves. Some didn't think anyone could help at all. And some just didn't know where to look. And the next one, please. Thank you. Look at that. This was stressed 2 weeks ago at the conference. 63% of survey respondents couldn't afford a mattress or a bed. That's not a fancy man. If you sleep on a water bed at night, we're not talking that sort of thing. This is just a basic mattress. We have visited people who have had nothing in the house. Nothing. We once had a phone call from, while we were packing the hamper bags, funnily enough, for one Christmas, a phone call from a counsellor who said, look, we know you help people, can you help? We've just had a call from a lady who's facing eviction. We're working on that. But all she's got in the house is half a pint of milk. We never, ever, ever, ever give clients money, but we will do emergency shops. So 2 people went off and did an emergency shop. Those are the sort of clients we're often dealing with. Give the next one, please. So, in the past year, 47% of clients went without food, 72% went without healthy food, and 43% without hot meals. That's a bit stark. It doesn't mean that 47% of people went without food all year. It just means they had to miss eating now and again because they simply couldn't afford it. So one statistic is missing. I didn't put it up there. It's very stark. It would say in big letters 49%. Every year when they do this survey, a question is asked. Last year, 49% of the clients CAT dealt with had either attempted or contemplated suicide as the way of getting out of debt. That is frightening. It is thought that this year it will go above 50%. If I'd stood here 2 years ago, I'd have been telling you that the average for those first 8 or 9 years we were involved was about 32%. The situation is getting worse, and we live in the 6th largest economy in the world. I find that horrifying. So what do we actually do? Well, clients ring head office. They never ring us direct because there's a sort of triage system goes on. And then head office make an appointment with one of our debt coaches. At the minute, we have one debt coach. We should have a debt coach manager, but some of you will remember Gail because she used to come to things here now and again. But Gail resigned, got married, and lives a bit far away now for doing this job. And so we're looking for a debt centre manager. So there should be 2 part-time people who we pay who visit the clients. So the appointment's made, and then our debt coach and somebody else who we call, or CAP call, a befriender, will go and visit the person. Sometimes the person may want to meet at St John's, and we have a little office there. But more or less, we go to people's homes. We explain how the system works. We always offer to pray with the people. And I would say that less than 3% of our clients have said, no, I don't want to be prayed for, thanks. The most wonderful one of all was a lady who did that on the first 2 visits. And when the phone call was made to arrange the 3rd visit, said, before you go, I have a problem. Would you please pray for me? That gives us all a lift when we hear that sort of thing. Now, again, if I was here 2 years ago, I would tell you exactly what used to happen. There would be 3 visits. The first visit is, this is how it works. Would you like to do it? Yes, please, or no, thank you. The second visit, you get all their facts and figures together. How much do they earn? How much do they spend? And then it's sent off to CAP headquarters, who work out a budget for them. The budget is to get them out of debt, to try and help them save a bit, and, start them on the journey out of debt. And CAP head office will deal with the bailiffs. CAP head office will deal with their creditors. So they might ring up a creditor and say, look, if you keep charging interest, you are never ever going to get your money back. Why don't you drop the interest? And then we can start helping you get your money and help this person get out of debt. That used to be 3 visits. We would keep in touch with the person, but head office would do the financial work. Now, it's getting to 5 and 6 visits for some people. We are finding more and more that the clients we're dealing with have mental health issues. There is a theory that has been put forward that now it's possible to get out of debt online by filling in various forms, that what's happening is people who are more with it in terms of their finances are doing that and leaving organisations like CAP to pick up more of the difficult cases. Therefore, the percentage of clients we are dealing with who have problems is greater than it used to be, if that makes sense. So it is getting harder to help clients. So what happens when the debt coach arrives? Well, the next slide hopefully will help with that. I'm so happy to be debt-free, and CAP were great in helping me. Thank you is not enough. Clients describe the debt coach as friendly, non-judgmental, and able to explain things clearly. Non-judgmental is vital. That's why clients are embarrassed. That's why clients are ashamed, because if you're in debt, it's your fault. And as I say, for over 90% of them, it isn't. So what we're doing is we're showing God's love to people. As I said, God clearly has a heart for the poor. We are going and showing God's love to people. We're walking alongside them. We're getting them out of debt, and we're giving them the hope that only God can give. Now this is a very big year for us. 2025 is turning out to be a brilliant year. Earlier this year, our 50th client came out of debt. And if we can shift in 2025 another £2,636 worth of debt, we will have cleared £1 million of debt since we started. Some clients take less than a year to get out of debt. Some clients it can take 5 years, depending on the debt. It is quite difficult sometimes when you visit a client. To say to be non-judgmental isn't quite the word, but I've made this mistake. How big's your debt? £27,000. That's what I did. Not a good idea to do that, but it's natural. Or you're sitting there and you're talking, the debt coach is talking to this client, and you think, well, the answer's obvious, you nut. If you're feeding those 7 dogs you've got and it's costing you that much, shoot the dogs. But, you know, sometimes it's obvious, and you have to gently say, look, there's a clear way out of this. For most people, it is not like that. Most people are in debt, and they can't see a way out of it. And until we send the stuff to head office, neither can we, because what they're paying for is essentials. We have seen clients come out of debt. We've seen clients who have been churchgoers left, starting to come back. We have seen clients give their lives to Christ. I don't necessarily hear about those, because if, for example, we have a client who's living in Chessington, we're not going to say to them, come to St. John's. We're going to put them in touch with a church in Chessington. And we may not hear if they become Christians, but we know. I know of at least 15. And for the first few years we started, most of our clients were already Christians because they heard about it through churches. Now, of course, they get referred by everybody. GPs even refer people. We have seen God at work. If you don't mind, have I got time to give a couple of examples? I'm looking straight at Stephen's giving me the thumbs up. We have seen God at work. I would like to give you 2 examples. Now, you may think these are coincidences. That's up to you. I do not. Our first debt client was a lady called Val. She was a member of St. John's, but she fell ill after 5 years, and she had to stop being our debt centre manager. We advertised twice, and we got some interest. About 5 people over the 2 adverts got in touch with me, and I met with them, and it became clear that actually the job wasn't right for them and they weren't right for the job. Obviously, I can't mention any names. None of them were from Christchurch, but I will tell you one of the ones, a lovely lady, said, there are redundancy meetings where I work. I work in finance. I've always wanted to do this sort of thing. I've got a meeting next week. I think I'm going to be made redundant. I would be interested. I spent 2 lovely hours with this lady. Got a phone call the next week, and she said, you know that redundancy meeting I went to? I said, yes. I got a promotion. So that ruled her out straight away. But we had a lady who went to see her minister, because your local minister has to support you, and he said, you're not the right person for this. You would worry too much about the people. Which is a lovely quality to have, but you can't lose sleep over it, you know? So all these 5, for good reasons, dropped by the wayside. So I spoke to Anna and Elizabeth in the office and said, look, we've been sending out emails. Is that the best way to reach churches? And to be fair to Anna and Elizabeth, said, well, often when it gets into churches, emails get lost. And we have learnt that now from other churches. So we decided we were going to send out letters to every church in the borough of Kingston and to about 10 churches just outside. Now, at the same time, the then London area manager for CAP said to me, we normally give debt centres a year to find somebody. Head office are pushing me. I'm very much on your side, because what she actually said was, I've never come across a church so committed to this. I'm very much on your side, but I'm having to fight hard. So I said, well, anything you need me to do, including if it going to head office, and having an argument, we want to keep going. So I sent a message around to the team saying this is the position, and one of them rang me and said, hang on a minute, is it 3 months since Val fell ill? Or is it 3 months since or is it a year since Val fell ill? Or is it a year since Val resigned? Because there's a 3-month difference. So I rang the London area manager and said, what about it? She got back to me and said, okay, you've got 3 months. So we sent the letter out. We prayed like mad. 48 hours after the letter was posted, my phone went one evening, because it said, if you want to talk about this, ring Phil on this number. And a voice said, is that Phil Hutchinson? I said, yep. She said, I'd like to ask you about the job as debt centre manager, please. Oh, that's lovely. Which church do you go to? The Vineyard in Friedrichshafen. I beg your pardon? The Vineyard in Friedrichshafen. Where are you? I'm in a very tiny flat overlooking Lake Constance in Germany. And I said, I'm sorry, how on earth did a letter posted 48 years ago to churches in Kingston reach you? And sure enough, there was a connection. We are convinced at St. John's that was God. We've got a few months left to find somebody. We send a letter out to the churches in Kingston, and a woman sitting in a flat in southern Germany gets it. I mean, I know the post office aren't that good, but, you know. The second thing where we see God work was, again, funny enough, one of the days we were packing the hampers. And this time it was a different counsellor, who actually was a member of St John's, who rang me and said, I know you're packing the hampers, can you do an extra one? We have got a young lady with a 3-month-old baby who has been turfed out of her house by the family. She is an ex-Muslim who's become a Christian. That has not helped, but she's also a single mum. We have found a flat on the Cambridge estate. There is absolutely nothing in it. And I mean nothing. There's nothing on the floor, no curtains, no bed, no anything. Could we help? It was an afternoon we were doing this. And I said, everybody stop. I've just had this phone call from David. Got to put another hamper together. Apparently he also says she's got nothing to put the baby in. No baby stuff at all. No crib, no anything. And then we had one of those, when God works, you're not going to believe this moments, when one of the people said, you're not going to believe this. She said, most of you know that I help in the oxygen shop. This morning a woman came in, she had a crib and loads of baby stuff. Let me ring the shop now. And she rang and it was still there. And the next morning a crib was delivered, loads of baby stuff. Somebody heard about this on the Vine, not a member of St John's, I hasten to add, and offered a washing machine. When 2 people went to pick it up, it was a lovely washing machine, except most washing machines have that Perspex front that keeps the water in. This one didn't, so we didn't use it. But we even managed to source a bed for her as well. That we get a phone call from a counsellor on the afternoon when a crib was delivered to the oxygen shop that very morning has to be God. So, we've been doing this now for 10 years. And if you said to me, what's the one thing that sticks in your mind? It wouldn't be the times I've cried. It would be this. About 7 years ago, we did some research into poverty in Kingston with the university. And I and a guy called Paul Pickover, who then ran the food bank and has now gone on to greater things, running lots of things in Kingston, met with a professor and a senior lecturer at the geography department at Kingston University. We met a few times, and in one of the meetings we were explaining some of the problems our clients had and how they'd come to be in the position they're in. And this senior lecturer just suddenly looked straight in my eyes as I was talking, and she said, I've just realised something. And I said, what's that? And that's what she said. We're all one step away from this, aren't we? You only have to fall ill. You only have to lose your job for some reason. And this can happen to you. And I've seen that time and time again. That is why that phrase stuck in my mind for the last 7 or 8 years. Because we are. This could happen to any one of us at any time. Thank God it hasn't for most of us. If you want to help, and we hope you will, let me explain what you can do. You could be a befriender, goes to visit people. That tends to be in the daytime, by the way. Goes to visit people with the debt coach. The one thing you can all do, please, is pray. We're looking for somebody to help put a newsletter together to the other churches. We'd happily provide all the information, but it just needs that artistic tweak and something to make it zing, if you like. We heard last week of the debt centre in Barnet, where somebody who volunteers at the Citizens Against Poverty, it's not called that, the Citizens Advice Bureau, that'll do, the Citizens Advice Bureau, who's offered to help clients fill in forms if they need to, because that's not always easy. We're looking for a debt centre manager, part-time, 16 hours a week. The advert will come out next week. Yeah, it's coming out. You'll get it in the office on Tuesday. Make sure everybody sees it, Anna. Okay, so you could do that. Or you could give financially. It costs us about 30 grand a year to run the debt centre, and money is getting harder to find. But if you do feel you want to give, please can you let me know? The reason I'd like to know is this. Some people decide to give to CAP, so they go on the website and they sign up to give to CAP, and it goes to head office, which is fine. But they have their own expenses and we have our expenses. So if you want to give to the local debt centre, come and find me afterwards. Having done this now for coming up 12 years soon, I know that God wanted St. John's to do this. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. Many people live lives they shouldn't be living through no fault of their own. We are Jesus' hands and feet. We go and we show them that God loves them.